What's going on, everyone? I am here with a really cool special guest today. This is Johannes Eckerstrom from the band Avatar. Now, I first saw them this last year at Wacken Open Air, and that was the first time I'd seen them, even though they've been around since, I believe, 2001, which is, I think, what their Wikipedia says. And they were fantastic. This dude, as a singer and frontman, has more showmanship and charisma in his little finger than 90% of the bands put together. And so yeah, I mean, I don't care if you like the music or not, you're going to be entertained, and it shows that I mean, this band has climbed through the ranks and really been kicking some ass. And in addition to that, he is vegan, I believe. You're vegan, is that correct?
Correct. The whole band is.
The whole band is vegan. So the whole band is vegan. That is cool as hell. So we're gonna have a conversation, and thank you so much for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure. I like your dungeon.
Appreciate it. And of course, first and foremost, they have a new album coming out. It's called Huntergatherer. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so tell us a little bit about that before we get into everything else. Maybe
I should contextualize why a band where everyone is vegan are using the word hunter in an album title. So yeah, let's start with the title, I guess. Essentially, what that all came from is the idea that as far as evolution goes, and what we were biologically wired to be, what we were back in the Stone Age, were to live as hunter-gatherers, and as far as we can tell from whatever, life was probably pretty not bad back then on an individual level. You know, we were in our natural habitat. We were like penguins on Antarctica, you know, like things were very much as they were supposed to be. Now we have these very complex brains, and our ability to, you know, our engineering skills, our ability to plan and cooperate, communicate, all these things paved the way for a way more complex way of living. First step being agriculture. And the agriculture phase was, you know, once we started to plant things and harvest them, was a great recipe for success for us as a species, but quite detrimental for us on an individual level.
Sure.
You know, work became more monotonous. Work became harder. The concept of work started to exist instead of just, you know, gathering roots and berries and whatnot. And you know, start to plow in the field mean that is when you start to find skeletons, you know, with arthritis. That is also a period when we had to get more children because we needed more people to work the fields, and more children meant sicker children, more malnourished children. And we lived closer together. We got sicker. We needed to store food for the winter, and that was something desirable to steal. So more thievery, more guards, more weapons, more walls to build, more control of land, more conflict about land, war. And everything got worse for the individual pretty much. But again, better as far as, you know, the purpose of a species goes, meaning, sure, you know, flowers exist to be, you know, to pollinate and become more, and that we are not higher being than them in any way in that sense. And fast forward, Industrial Revolution is a similar process, where more monotonous work, longer days, trapped indoors, more polluted, health issues, but we are building machines that can feed and clothe way more of us. So great, amazing success for the species, but detrimental on an individual level. This trend kind of started to turn around and change. I guess we're talking post-World Wars, at least post-World War I. that life in general on the planet for humans quality of life started to increase for individuals overall. You know, there's still piss poor countries and people in terrible situations, but they are fewer than they were, and that curve, you know, there are less and less of in the category of poorest nations, and most countries are somewhere in the middle in terms of just health and education and being fed and whatever. However, now we are ruining the planet, at least to the extent that it will be harder for humans to live on it. And we have created, again, this very, very complex world, a gilded high-tech cage for ourselves that is very, very far detached from what it used to mean to be human at some point. We are so far away from our natural habitat at this point. And as far as I'm concerned, there's not even a point in discussing really going back to anything. You know, you can't climb a tree and call yourself a monkey. We are where we are, far detached, too far down the road, that I only see any hope for any kind of solution lies ahead of us. And we are basically in this fork in the road, where the choice is a future that, I don't know, looks like Terminator 2 or Mad Max or something, or Star Trek. And I'm rooting for the Star Trek solution to things, you know, solve all our conflicts, all ethnicities and, you know, races and whatever on spaceships going out exploring the stars. And the problem is that the problems are accelerating, and there's a certain tension in the world right now, and we have to outrun this ever accelerating situation that we are in. And that's kind of, and the album is then, that is one aspect of the album, just exploring that big picture issue, but also, again, going to the whole technological gilded cage, or just the here and now that we live in, this dystopian future that Fear Factory warned us about in the 90s. We're kind of there.
Yeah.
And we are just in this, and it's, you know, it's an album trying to figure out or deal with the fact, what does it mean to be human right now? And on the personal level, the songs that are like that, what does it mean to be me right now? So
yeah.
that's a big picture, I guess.
No, that's really awesome. I'm actually a very firm believer that that it's sort of what you're saying, like the fact that, like, okay, so society has done well for itself in terms of being able to create lots of food and create a large population, but in that we've lost sort of our sort of individual ways to contribute to society in a sense, or in like a seemingly meaningful way, like whereas if we lived in like a small tribe, then like you could obviously build something for the tribe, and it's and it's a good thing, and you feel connected to all that, but
exactly. But again, it's so hard to go. I don't see us ever being able to go back. So we have to. No,
I agree.
Again, strangely, this weird. Oh, well, there is only forward, and that is very hard, because there's no guarantee that forward will lead to anything positive. But we have no other choice than to try.
The only way out is through with this. I agree. So what's the so are you in Sweden or Finland right now? Couldn't tell.
I live in Finland since for the last, I moved here soon to be 6 years, and the rest of the guys are still in Sweden. And pre-COVID it was took 1 hour, 2 hours with getting to the airport to go and see them, so it was never an issue. And now it's a bit weird.
Sure. How's the vegan scene in Finland and Sweden as well?
It's good. I think particularly Sweden, it has been explosive. But in the last few years, I can tell from, like, I was an off and on again vegetarian since I was 16, and went fully vegan. It must have been around the same time that I already lived here, but I think it was shortly after I moved here. So it's soon going on 6 years, and I think the change has been tremendous, just in choices and stuff. Then I have become very whole foods, not the store, the type of food,
yes,
whole plant-based most of the time that I eat. Most of the stuff I eat would fall under that category, and I just cook daily. So, as it's all based in actual nuts, fruit, and vegetables and stuff. I don't use many substitutes
products.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sometimes food for me, but they do have their, we get Beyond Burgers here as well and all that.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I had recently just eaten maybe a little too many Beyond Burgers because they were buy one get one free this last week, and
they're so expensive here.
Yeah. No, I mean that's why I typically honestly don't buy them that much, just because of the price, and honestly I like making a lot of other more whole food based stuff, or I mean sometimes with other processed things, but like but I've definitely realized that, especially when if you buy, I guess, any of the processed things a lot, and it's a convenience food, and so you're like, okay, well I have that, well I'm just gonna go ahead and eat it then. And
if I have it, I eat it. If I have
exactly,
it, I eat it.
Exactly. Me too. So and then all of a sudden, 3 meals down the line, you've eaten like vegan cheeseburgers for 3 separate meals or something in a row, and it maybe doesn't feel quite as good as eating like a wide variety of other things.
No, exactly.
So one more aspect, or like the food scene in Finland and Switzerland with vegan things. Do you see all vegan restaurants cropping up? And if so, like what kind of style are they? Or do you see vegan options in different types of restaurants, or what is it like there?
Vegan options have become very common in any kind of establishment nowadays, both in Finland and in Sweden. But yeah, completely vegan restaurants is also something that starts to crop up, and in the beginning, like say when I moved here, was many. The student cafe with a lentil stew closing at 4 there was a wide variety of those places. But now they're more specialized. Again, the pizza and burger joint, or what I really like on those few occasions that we do eat out, is that a lot of those fine dining 5 to 7 course meals, matching it with your wines places. A lot of those places have a very vegan menu that is just as ambitious as any of their others. So I really appreciate, because I was missing that for a long time. I can still to this day miss in general in the vegan scene, I guess, is let's put on some nice clothes and eat. That
sure.
that level of place can be tricky to find outside of really big cities.
That's absolutely true. When I think of it, I really think of it in only very big cities. And,
like we have some favorites along the road. One that pops to mind is there's a place called Plum in Seattle.
Oh yeah.
That nowadays we might even book a table and make an effort, telling crew we're sound checking early today, or late, just to be able to head over there. I bought their book even.
So you like the fine dining vegan experience?
Yeah. Well,
how does that differ from how you eat on the road?
Well, the thing is, what I really like to do, and what most of us in the band we're into, is again cooking for ourselves. Like we do Walmart runs, and we bought a skillet that you just plug into the wall, and lots of cooking is being done on the bus. When we tour the States, in Europe, it's catering, and we hit once you hit a certain level, which isn't even has to be that high, you just put on your rider, what you eat and don't eat, and the catering is worked around that. But in the States, and at home, I just, like I said, for probably 99% of the time, I'm cooking. So that means if I'm eating out, then I guess then you might, why not splurge and do something special with it then, and go to one of those weird places that uses flowers you didn't know you could eat, and who has fermented everything that grows in weird jars in the basement, and just those were done by chefs that just know it way better than I do. It's like that. My wife's Italian, and we just pasta dishes are always better homemade if it's done by the right person, for instance.
Sure. And you made a really good point, actually, with the fact that if you're cooking 99% of your meals, then some people might say like, oh, well, I mean, fine dining, yeah, that's great for rich people or whatever. But if you're cooking 99% of your meals, then all those times that you didn't get a sandwich for $7 here or whatever they call it,
exactly,
or $10 there or this or that, like the next thing, all that adds up to probably quite a bit more than a fine dining experience.
Exactly, and because it doesn't even have to be, the fine dining thing doesn't have to be that expensive. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't need to be the 3 Michelin stars in the center of Paris price on it. It's also it's also like with music, it's a genre, and I don't know, going to a Prague concert doesn't necessarily have to be that much more expensive than going to the underground punk show or whatever. I don't know if that analogy works, but it seems very inaccessible and unattainable from the outside for people. Sometimes I think there can be a sense of maybe I don't belong here, but it's in that sense it's like any other service. Like you pay for a service that they are very interested in providing, because that's how they pay their rent and put food on their table. It's not crazier than that. Then it could be, I think the idea of the snobbiness around it and everything is usually just something you feel from the outside.
Sure.
But then you can just go there and enjoy the ride, and places like that, again, an extra effort is being made by everyone involved, of course, the cooking, but also the service and everything around it. So yeah, it costs a bit more, but really, even before the whole being locked down and everything, I don't remember last time I ate out anyway. It was last year for sure. So
wow, okay.
So I mean, so then again, I feel I can splurge and go for the fancy stuff.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think I speak for a lot of people, especially in the States, that if they said, oh, the last time I ate out was last year, yeah, that would be like unheard of. And,
yeah, no, but it's just, but again, because eating out is way cheaper and way more common way of life in the States, I've noticed that very clearly. And and I came from a home where both mom and dad, cooked, and they still do. And for them, this was also always a pastime, something they would do together or for each other or for us, and introduced us kids to this and that. They were, I grew up in a household where cooking was definitely a hobby. The amount of cookbooks and cook magazines and everything in the shelves there. And now that they both retired, my mom, picked up this collection of, I don't know, old cooking magazines from spanning back. I don't know from what decade it started, but she had this dream now that they both are retired, that they're gonna start with issue number 1 from 75 or whatever and work their way through the coolest stuff they can find. I don't know if they got started on that, but I love the sentiments. So I know I grew up with cooking as being something that you do. And I also know most of my friends hate the idea of cooking for just themselves. But for me, I don't
understand that, actually. Like,
no.
I've heard that so many times, and I'm like, why wouldn't you want to cook for yourself? You don't want to eat good food?
And especially, and Yeah, I love it. And to treat yourself like that, I feel like that's self-pampering. That's my bath salts in the tub or spa night or whatever. That, you know, that is very, very attainable. And also that's the time to experiment because, oh, it's too salty, it's too greasy, it's too whatever. Oh, good thing I'm eating it. I like salt and grease. You know, like, I'm good. So it's you can't fail.
Do you find on the like when cooking on the road, when touring the States, do you find that, I mean, this would be a little bit hard to tell, but do you find that you're maybe healthier or more like feel better in general than a lot of the other bands that you tour with? Or like, do you get any kind of assessment with that if everyone else is eating 7-Eleven hot dogs or whatever, and y'all are cooking decent meals? Do you see any difference, or is it hard to tell?
I think that's hard to tell. Well, I know for a fact that we are, I know in the last few years we have, you know, because we've been on the road for, you know, not as in the early, since we were in our late teens, although we didn't get to tour as much then as we do nowadays. And we got our fair share of the wildlife in. First time we toured the States, we were there for 6 weeks, and I was sober for 3 days, and we had a wonderful time. So we've done a lot of that. Nowadays, there are more yoga mats on the bus than anything else, I guess. And we work out a lot, most of us in the band, and that plus, you know, to think on what we're eating and stuff I think that's from being the most decadent part of my life, and you know, it's at some point became probably the part of the time when because on tour, like you have certain control of your day in a way that your home life doesn't really allow for. Sure. Because it's all about the show and optimizing the day around wanting to, you know, what that show needs and what you need to be able to sustain yourself for that month or forever, how long you're out. And therefore it's easier to keep very rigid schedules going. So the fitness regimen is pretty strict for most of us in the band at the same time. So I do believe we feel better than most.
No, that's incredible. And actually, I've heard more and more of that from other touring musicians and other top bands. Good friends with this guy John Siren that wrote a book called The Touring Vegan here, and he's
I've heard of it.
Drummer for the band IMX and a zillion other bands, and yeah, he's huge into fitness and huge into and he cooks on the road while he eats, just as like a rice cooker, and like puts things together, like, and yeah, makes it happen in a really cool way. And
definitely it's way more common than it used to be. Is so many, like, and I think it's a generational thing. One thing is that, you know, again, we care about the music more than anything, and at some point it's like, wow, feeling like this, I can kick even more ass and push myself. With metal also, the way like, we don't use triggers on the drums, and, you know, yeah, we got heavy distorted guitars, but the distortion is still in a way where it's very dependent on how you hit the instrument. We play as hard as the music is, you know.
Sure.
And there's a very, very, for us it's so that physical aspect of what it is to play metal. We think, like, I think it's so important for the sound of metal, for the feel of metal, for what metal music is and should be, that there is that level of sweating there. And I just want to get my body out of the way, basically. I don't want anything to hold me back. And no matter how fit I get or don't get, I anyway push myself to exhaustion. And there's a certain level of competitiveness in this, I think, as well. Like, because there's no, talking about life post-industrial revolution, there's no lack of young men and women who get the idea in their head that, work in a factory, tour the world playing electric guitar. Like, which one do you want to do? And so, you know, there's there's definitely people there that are more than willing to fill that spot if you're not up for the task. So so there's a passion and a certain level of competitiveness and all that drives you, and you see it all around, like among other bands. Yoga mats, man, everywhere, and free weights,
and
jump ropes.
For everyone
everything.
that hasn't seen Avatar, when he says they are a very physical band live, like seriously, the physical energy, of just the amount of movement that you all do, and of course with the theatrics, I can imagine that you push yourself to exhaustion every time, and
yeah, but it's never enough. It's never enough. There's always a new level to reach. Because then you watch some Iron Maiden show, and they are in their 60s now, right?
Yeah,
they must be.
Like that.
And then you watch Bruce Dickinson. Of course, he grew up a child with a greater interest in sport than I ever had. Of course, but you can still. That's one of those things you aspire to be. Why would you want to be anything less than that as a performer? At least as far as physical ability goes,
Absolutely. Which is you mentioned sort of different eras, like before it was sort of one way, and now with yoga mats and things everywhere. So you all have been a band for, I believe it said 2001. Is that correct?
That is correct. But there's a bit of an asterisk there. Avatar was started in 2001 because that's when Jonas and John, so guitar and drummer respectively, met, and they were 14 and 15 years old. I joined in 2002, and and we had some members come and go there early on, but in 2003 is when Jonas started Gymnasium, the kind of equivalent of high school in the US system, and he met Henrik and then Simon, who was in the band up until we recorded Black Walls. And the real birth of Avatar, the whole, 5 equally ambitious guys, who really were going all in with this and had no doubt in their minds what they wanted to do. And we started to write our own songs, not just trying to figure out, covers and all that. That happened kind of 2003, but we're still very young at the time, and we grew up with each other, grew up in this band, and learned how to play and stuff with each other.
How long would you say that you've been sort of a professional outfit for that you've been really just pretty much just doing the band stuff, or largely?
Well, for me specifically, it's been just a couple of months. Well, a couple of months, but it's also a bit by choice. We have always done something on the side out of necessity, but also out of like if I would have been willing to live in a certain way, then maybe I could have had it earlier. but there was for a while some wiggle room to work a bit extra. But that part became ever increasing in the last 5-6 years or so. You find success, you are this overnight sensation 10 years in the making. I think is very, very common. And at some point too, you might, surface from the underground in a way that people and you will hit a period where a lot more people suddenly will hear you for the first time, although you've been doing these baby steps along the way. You can never, no band really gets away from the period of you have to take one step at a time up the stairs, basically, and you can't skip any step. We've been trying our best to run up the stairs, but you still have to do every step of the way, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've seen sort of a few different eras of the music industry, in a sense. I mean, from early 2000s up to now. For bands that are trying to emerge now, what have you seen to be sort of the biggest return for your dollar, or biggest return for your effort? Like where should bands put their focus when trying to emerge on this stage now?
Well, your focus, the obvious first thing is, no matter what your focus is, you know, there are different ways to monetize it, but it has to be about the music first.
For sure.
And in my experience, in our case, we have ended up being rewarded the more selfish we've been, in the sense of, if we focus on the kind of music that we actually want to hear, that we actually want to play, and what we are into and we believe in, that we are the only focus group we test on are each other. And we always make music where we would be at peace if everybody else in the world would hate them. That has been an approach we've been rewarded for that approach over and over again. So that always has to come first. But then in terms of the business side, if you're any kind of metal band, you know, merchandise is there in a way that you can't compare it to any other genre, as far as I know. Just, you know, it's part of the culture that
Sure.
you represent by, you know, wearing the merch of the bands you like. And essentially what it means, that to be a musician today, write, release, and perform your own material, that kind of musician, means that you are in the shittiest retail company in the world. It's the most complicated, convoluted marketing ploy to sell clothes. But that has been true for a long time. Sure. Now we are still in an ever-changing period where, you know, you can. For us, it's definitely there's still points to working with signing with labels and do all that. At the same time, the future is very uncertain, because there's so much you can do by yourselves. And
I was going to ask you about that, about the pros and cons of independent versus labels.
Well, we have been signed to something since our first album. We were about to release the first album by ourselves, but we got signed while recording it. Mm-hmm. And all in all, it depends on the label, and it depends on the contract. And but it's very hard to get the kind of contract you would like to get on your early stuff. You're very much at the mercy of the world, because you haven't gotten a chance to prove yourself and everything, and to find honest people who wants the best for you and not just for themselves is very hard in music in general, and with little experience it's even harder. But it depends on the label, I think. But I don't know, I'm thinking now about the people who get successful with their podcasts or with their YouTube channels. I guess is a very clear example, and of just how self-made you can be now in this online era. Mm-hmm. But the thing is also to break through that wall of noise of everyone else having similar ambition is really hard.
Yes.
Number one is you just have to try to be the best at what you do, and do it in a way that nobody else can. So if people want that thing you're doing, you should, strive to be the best at it, or as good as you possibly can be. And that's true for anything. But then, with label comes, some doors are open for you, I guess, in terms of just, then you have a person sitting in an office making those phone calls to try to schedule those interviews for you. Then you have just people who are willing to do maybe that initial investment tour support to help you get out on the road, to get you to open for some bigger bands, and all that can be done without, of course. But to build those network like that is a huge challenge if you do it by yourself.
Sure.
So it's a catch-22, especially in the early days,
Mm-hmm.
Because again, before, it's as much as we all want to discover and hear new music, and that the small unknown one, and discover something magical out there that no one else has heard yet. who knows where to start? You know, it's always
That's the truth.
I always randomly stumble upon, I don't know, on Spotify or something. Wow, this is amazing, and only 2,000 streams. How is this possible? You know that, but that doesn't happen every day. And I don't, even if I would want to, I wouldn't be able to give all those 2,000 streams bands a fair chance for me to discover them. You know,
For sure.
So I don't know. It's hard, but at this day and age, it still, in my opinion, doesn't hurt to get signed. But you should have some kind of mentorship if you are in touch with anyone who has been in the game longer than you have, or if you can get in touch with someone, a lawyer or anything, who helps you read those contracts. I've done that for some friends and acquaintances, like not from the point of view of a lawyer, of course, but just someone who has been in a band for a while and look at a contract and been able to tell maybe not what the best deal is, but I can clearly see if something is just a fucking joke, and say, whatever you do, don't sign with these guys. This is a kid in a bedroom he has no idea what he's doing. Run for your life. You don't want to do this, you know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, because I know I'm all over the place with this, but I think it's not, to get signed is not, as it used to be, the be all end all of making it with your music. But it sure as hell doesn't hurt.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's great advice. And it's kind of funny with the contract thing. One thing that I've seen personally is that in the States, the contracts are these like convoluted, very flowery, very like law language things. And from what I've seen, or from my experiences in like Switzerland and Germany and whatnot.
Sweden.
No, my own
got it.
Experiences. Everything is just like to the point. It just clearly, it's very clear and one page, and and it's kind of a funny difference between.
I guess I know what you mean. That's true. But, I should add this. Never, ever, ever as a band, never sign a 360 deal. There you're better off on it. And never, ever, ever give away any rights to your merch. You can have something there where sometimes a label might say, we get to do 2 t-shirts per album cycle or something, you know, and something minuscule like that. But you should be in charge of your own merchandise. The band should be the merchandise company, and then you work with who you want to work with, and you know, set it up the way you see fit, depending on how hands-on you are or whatever, if you have access to storage facilities or whatever. And in the early days, a storage facility means you get, 100 shirts printed, put them under your bed, and then throw them in the back in the van in the beginning. You don't need anyone for that, and you grow it from there, but you don't ever give that away. That belongs to the band.
Okay, that's that is solid advice for everyone out there starting out, because I think those 360 deals are pretty popular on the label side.
It came as a reaction when piracy exploded with internet, but it's that the labels wants to make up for the money they are no longer making in physical sales, and I see the point. But music label's job is inherently to sell the music, specifically sell the recording. And yes, it's a challenge today to find a way to monetize that. It's way easier and way more functional in 2020 than it was in the year 2000. That's for sure. Like the model is starting to fall into place in a way that it didn't in the past. And because it turns out that people still are willing to pay for music. Super fans are willing to pay a bit extra for the physical thing still to this day, and it's worth try to do cool things, worth getting for a fan who is into the culture. And then with the streaming services, people willingly, subscribe to Spotify or whatever. People are just looking for not always the cheapest way, which would mean piracy. We're looking for the most convenient way to consume music, it's better than it used to be. And a label's job is to sell the music, and if that is what they should make their money from,
for sure, not
from shirts.
No, that's That's a really good point. And for everyone that doesn't know a 360 label deal, you might have heard of it or not, but basically the label wants basically a piece of everything that the band sells.
And that is, with the motivation that we're going to help you with everything, we're going to be involved and hands-on, and work with the band in every aspect. But you don't need them for every aspect. You need, number one, no one will ever care about your band as much as you guys will.
Sure.
You will find some, throughout the years. We have Johan Kalén, who we make the music videos with, who shoots and directs them, and we work them up. We do them together with him. We have our management that we are very happy with, that are very passionate about the band and stuff. So you'll pick up some people along the way, but most of them will come and go, even the good ones, and no one will be there as long term and for the long haul in the same way as the guys in the band will be. And therefore you need to be your own CEO of the, as far as a band is a business venture, and it's a weird thing because it only becomes it becomes a successful business venture after, like, if the art falls into place, and if you make something worth people's time. So the art comes first. But, as far as a business venture goes, you need to be in control and in charge of that and willing to do that kind of work for it. Otherwise, you're going to be eaten alive, and that will ruin the music. That will ruin all the cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome advice. Then thanks for sharing that. Anything else that you personally wanted to get out that the band is going to be up to, or
Well, again, we can't tour. We can't tour. So no, I appreciate to be on a podcast where I could talk a bit about veganism, and ultimately, I guess all us in the band would sign under that we are doing it for the animals first and foremost. It's a type of suffering in this world that is so unnecessary.
Damn straight.
But then and I acknowledge there's a certain level of confirmation bias in this. I guess that I find evidence. I like to listen to things that confirms my point of view. But it seems like in the last few years, everything is pointing toward the direction that, wow, this is a good idea. I'm probably at the healthiest I've been since I stopped growing. So, right now, when I've been the most rigid in how and what I eat and how I take care of myself. And food is, of course, and I work out, but you can never outrun your fork. So
that's the truth.
So you have that, but on top of that, you get the environmental stuff, and of course that, and I'm sure many of the people who follow you already. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. Then one thing that floored me that I had never put in lots of thought into, that seems so very worthwhile to get out there and maybe to save some more animals and do some good in the world, is I never thought about how every pandemic, every big disease, measles, COVID, whatever you want, comes from our domestication of animals.
Yep. And that influenza as well.
Yeah. It's literally all of them. I didn't, and how I listened to How Not to Die at Guy.
Dr. Greger.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He was on a podcast that I listened to, and how in his field, how they consider the current shit we're going through now to be a nice practice round for the big one. And the big one will come from our chicken factories, and it will kill all of us. And it's easy to get very cynical about, we're so screwed, people won't change. But more people are changing their minds on this than ever before. Arnold Schwarzenegger changed his mind on this. Fuck's sake, we live in a different era with this. There will be plenty of time when we are all, burnt to ashes on a, barren, destroyed. When the planet looks like a black metal cover, there's some time to be disappointed and cynical and all that then. But right now, the animals don't need that. So I think there's a good point in just spreading those, and honestly using this time as a time for education for people around you, to at least drop that tidbit of fact there. I know you don't want to be none of us want to be the butt of the joke. How do you find out if someone's vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you, and all that. Sure, but if you talk about COVID, talk about the causes of this and the cause of the next one. Like, at least make people aware, and we plant that seed and yeah.
If COVID-19 was I think I saw a meme or something, or someone that said that if novel coronavirus was caused by tofu, don't you think people would start freaking out about tofu?
Yeah. Exactly. That's so good. That's exactly it.
But since it's meat, people will look the other. Well, I would say some people are looking the other way, and some people are not, and some people are really realizing it.
But it's this cognitive dissonance, because it's so hard. Because again, like, a lot of people in my life who I love and adore for all other reasons are, I don't cut my parents out of my life despite them still eating meat, obviously,
Sure.
And so there's a high level of cognitive dissonance when you deal with people around you who live normally, Mm-hmm. And that is just also because you had to admit to yourself that you spent, in my case, 2.5 decades, 3 decades, doing it wrong, basically.
Yeah.
And that is hard to do until it isn't, because I don't think neither you or I think it's hard to be a vegan.
No.
It's not a thing.
The hardest part is getting over that social conditioning, really, in the beginning.
And then you quickly reprogram yourself in terms of just meat doesn't really look like food to me anymore.
Exactly. No,
we do that all the time. If you cut sugar for a while and then have a soda for the first time in a long while, it will be too sweet and undrinkable.
Tastes like battery acid and
Yeah, exactly. And and then if you stay at it, it will taste good again. So, but we can rewire ourselves way easier than we realize. And that's a powerful insight in life in general, but it's definitely true when it comes to veganism. And so, yeah, I slapped my forehead a lot when I heard that whole domestication of animals and the connection to us killing ourselves with diseases. So I'm sure that's one of those factoids that should be out there more and be part of a conversation more. And it's up to people like us to drop that fact there at the dinner table when people are talking about masks and hand sanitizers and everything else about it.
Yeah, and maybe it's sort of the principle, I guess, of like a large stone cutter or whatever. That now, since I'm not in that profession, I don't really know, but I've heard that with a large stone cutter, like the stone cutter will sort of smack at the stone with like the hammer and chisel, like over and over and over again. It looks like it's doing nothing. Like that's sort of analogous to people mentioning like where these diseases are coming from. But then all of a sudden, with one hit, it cleaves perfectly in the way that the stone cutter wanted to do
exactly.
it. And so it'll sort of all happens in sort of fit like spurts.
Yeah, exactly. So that
all these hits are doing something.
Exactly. And and I can tell among some people close to me, and it was a domino effect within the band that kind of started with our light tech becoming vegan. And again, we were a bunch of vegetarians back in the day, thinking we did our part, and then we learned more, starting from him, and then we kind of inspired each other, and it spread from there among people we are touring with. So it can, if the conversation is had in the right way, you can really make a difference. Absolutely. But you just don't have to think. You don't have to win every argument, and you don't have to shout about it every time.
Sure.
But there are a lot of important truths to be said and it doesn't hurt to mention those truths.
And it's way easier when the truth is on your side, right?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
Then all of a sudden everyone else is sounding very cognitively dissonant, and at least like when we talk about these various truths of veganism, in a sense, that the truth is easily on our side, and we don't have to sound like cognitively dissonant. We could have at least less cognitive dissonance than
exactly, because we all do it. It's important to be empathetic with it at the same time, because I don't know what example I could bring up now of it, but of course my life is full of that as well. It's it's a lifelong project to eliminate that from your life.
Sure.
And and no one's perfect, and it's not about being perfect. It's just about doing a little bit better every day, and
trying to make the world suck a little bit less.
Exactly.
Than it is right now.
Exactly.
Well, thanks a ton for joining me with this, and
it was an absolute pleasure.
I think people will love hearing everything that you had to say.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.